Most people assume a productive vegetable garden begins with a backyard. They picture long rows of raised beds, wide open spaces, and plenty of sunshine stretching across a large yard. So, if all you have is a tiny balcony, a small patio, or an apartment with just enough room for a few buckets, it's easy to believe you're out of luck. I used to think exactly the same thing. Every spring, I dream about growing baskets, overflowing with tomatoes, and digging up piles of sweet potatoes. But every gardening guide seemed written for people with land, not for someone whose garden barely measured a few square feet. Then one growing season changed everything. Instead of wishing for more space, I started using ordinary buckets. A few months later, those same buckets were overflowing with glossy red tomatoes, thick green vines, and sweet potatoes hidden beneath the soil like buried treasure. That's when I realized something surprising. Plants don't care how big your yard is, they care how well you meet their needs. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how ordinary balcony buckets can produce extraordinary harvests. We'll cover everything from choosing the right containers to creating healthy soil, growing vigorous tomato plants, and harvesting sweet potatoes that seem impossible for such a small space. And be sure to stay until the end, because one simple watering habit dramatically increased my harvests while actually reducing the amount of water I used. Let's start where every successful bucket garden begins. Step 1. Choose the right bucket and set yourself up for success. Here's the thing. Not every bucket makes a good garden. Imagine placing two containers side by side. One is a small decorative pot that barely holds enough soil for a houseplant. The other is a sturdy 5-gallon bucket with plenty of room for expanding roots. At first glance, they seem similar. But below the surface, the difference is enormous. Tomatoes develop surprisingly extensive root systems. Sweet potatoes send out long roots that eventually swell into the delicious storage roots we harvest. Neither crop enjoys cramped growing conditions. For most gardeners, a 5-gallon bucket is an excellent starting point for one tomato plant or one sweet potato slip. Larger buckets can provide even more consistent moisture and give roots additional room to grow. Food-grade buckets are usually the safest choice, especially if you're growing edible crops. They are commonly available from bakeries, restaurants, or home improvement stores, and are designed for food contact. The next detail is just as important: drainage. Without several holes in the bottom of the bucket, excess water has nowhere to escape. Roots become waterlogged, oxygen disappears, growth slows dramatically. Drilling several evenly spaced drainage holes helps prevent these problems while keeping enough moisture available for healthy plants. One practical tip is to raise buckets slightly off the ground using small blocks, bricks, or pot feet. This improves drainage and prevents the holes from becoming blocked. Tomatoes grow well throughout USDA zones 4 through 11 during frost-free weather, while sweet potatoes thrive especially well in warmer regions, typically USDA zones 8 through 11, though shorter season varieties can also be grown successfully in cooler climates with enough warm weather. A productive harvest starts with giving roots enough room to breathe, grow, and thrive. Now that you've chosen the perfect container, it's time to fill it. And surprisingly, this is where many beginners unknowingly limit their future harvest. Step 2. Build rich soil that feeds your plants for months. Imagine filling your bucket with heavy clay dug straight from the backyard. It seems convenient, but after the first few waterings, that soil becomes dense and compacted. Water sits on the surface. Roots struggle to spread. Plants never reach their full potential. Container gardens need something different. Think of a healthy potting mix like a sponge. It absorbs moisture while still allowing plenty of air to circulate around the roots. Many experienced gardeners create a blend using high-quality compost for nutrients, coconut coir or peat-free growing media for moisture retention, and perlite or coarse sand to improve drainage. The result is light, fluffy soil that encourages rapid root development. Tomatoes reward rich, fertile soil with stronger vines and larger harvests. Sweet potatoes appreciate loose soil because it allows their storage roots to expand naturally instead of becoming twisted or misshapen. What most people don't realize is that healthy soil is full of microscopic life. Beneficial fungi, bacteria, and other organisms quietly recycle nutrients and support vigorous root growth throughout the season. Adding finished compost before planting helps introduce many of these beneficial organisms while improving the soil's ability to retain moisture. One gardening tip that pays off all season long is mixing a slow-release organic vegetable fertilizer into the soil before planting. This provides steady nutrition without overwhelming young roots. Avoid packing the soil tightly into the bucket. Instead, fill it gently, allowing natural air pockets to remain. Those tiny spaces are just as important as water. Healthy soil isn't simply something plants grow in, it's something they grow with. By now your bucket is ready. Healthy soil is waiting. But planting too early or choosing the wrong variety can undo all your hard work. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Step 3. Choose the best tomatoes and sweet potatoes for containers. Imagine planting a giant heirloom tomato that normally reaches 8 feet tall into a small bucket on a windy balcony. Within weeks, it's struggling. It needs more support, more space, more soil, more water. It can certainly be done, but beginners often have a much easier experience with compact or patio varieties bred specifically for containers. Determinate tomatoes produce much of their crop over a shorter period and usually remain more manageable in buckets. Dwarf varieties are even better suited to balconies, where space is limited but sunlight is plentiful. If you enjoy harvesting fresh tomatoes continuously throughout summer, compact, indeterminate varieties can also perform well, provided they receive proper staking and regular care. Sweet potatoes begin differently. Instead of planting seeds, gardeners usually grow them from slips, young shoots that sprout from mature sweet potatoes. Each slip develops into a vigorous vine capable of producing multiple storage roots underground. Choose varieties suited to your growing season. Short-season cultivars mature faster in cooler climates, while longer-season varieties often produce larger harvests, where summers are long and warm. Here's another advantage of sweet potatoes. The vines themselves are beautiful. Their lush green leaves spill gracefully over the edges of buckets, turning an ordinary balcony into a living curtain of vibrant foliage. Imagine walking outside each morning to see cascading vines surrounding bright clusters of ripening tomatoes. It's productive, it's beautiful, and it transforms even the smallest outdoor space into something alive. One practical tip is to plant only one tomato plant per 5-gallon bucket to avoid overcrowding. Sweet potatoes also perform best when given enough room to spread naturally without competing with another vigorous plant in the same container. Choosing the right variety is often the easiest shortcut to a bigger harvest. By now you're probably realizing that bucket gardening isn't about making compromises. In many ways, it gives you more control than traditional gardening, but the next step is where the real transformation begins. Because how you plant, and especially how you water, will determine whether those buckets produce a handful of vegetables or harvests that genuinely surprise you. Step 4. Plant tomatoes deep and sweet potatoes smart. Here's one of gardening's greatest hidden tricks. Tomatoes can grow roots almost anywhere along their stem. Look closely at a healthy tomato seedling, and you'll notice tiny bumps covering the lower stem. Those bumps are actually undeveloped root nodes. When buried beneath the soil, they become an entirely new root system. That means instead of planting your tomato at the same depth it grew in its nursery pot, remove the lower leaves and bury much of the stem. Only the upper cluster of healthy leaves should remain above the soil. Within a few weeks, the buried stem develops dozens of additional roots. The result is a stronger plant that's better able to absorb water, nutrients, and withstand windy balcony conditions. Sweet potatoes require a completely different approach. Each slip should be planted with its roots buried while keeping the leafy portion above the soil surface. Gently firm the soil around the base and water thoroughly after planting. Unlike regular potatoes, sweet potatoes form their edible storage roots from these rooted slips rather than from seed potatoes. They also appreciate warm soil. In fact, planting too early into cool conditions often slows growth dramatically. Wait until all danger of frost has passed and nighttime temperatures remain consistently warm before transplanting slips outdoors. One practical tip is to water immediately after planting and provide temporary shade for the first day or two if temperatures are extremely hot. This reduces transplant stress and helps the young roots establish quickly. A strong beginning below the soil always creates a stronger harvest above it. Now your plants are officially growing. But here's where many bucket gardens quietly begin to fail. Not from lack of sunlight, not from poor soil, from too much kindness. Step 5. Learn the watering rhythm that produces bigger harvests. Imagine checking your buckets every morning. The top inch of soil looks dry. You grab the watering can. The next morning it looks dry again, so you water again. After several weeks, your tomato leaves begin yellowing. Growth slows. Flowers start dropping. Many gardeners think they need even more water. Often, the opposite is true. Healthy roots need moisture, but they also need oxygen. If soil stays constantly saturated, oxygen disappears and roots struggle to function properly. Instead of watering by habit, water according to the soil. Push your finger about an inch or two into the growing mix. If it still feels damp, wait. If it feels dry, water deeply until excess moisture drains from the bottom of the bucket. Tomatoes especially appreciate consistent watering. Large swings between very dry and very wet soil can lead to cracked fruit and increase the risk of blossom end rot. Sweet potatoes are a little more forgiving once established. They prefer evenly moist soil during early growth, but mature plants can tolerate short dry periods better than tomatoes. Still, prolonged drought reduces root development and harvest size. Here's another trick many experienced gardeners use. Water early in the morning whenever possible. This gives plants plenty of moisture before daytime heat arrives, while allowing leaves that accidentally become wet to dry quickly. A thin layer of straw, shredded leaves, or untreated grass clippings spread across the soil surface acts like a natural blanket. It slows evaporation, keeps roots cooler during hot afternoons, and reduces how often you'll need to water. The secret isn't watering more, it's watering smarter. Deep, consistent watering builds stronger roots than frequent shallow watering ever will. By now, you're probably beginning to picture vines spilling over your balcony rail, clusters of tomatoes glowing in the sunshine, sweet potatoes quietly swelling beneath the soil. But none of that happens without one more ingredient. Food. Step 6. Feed bucket gardens like a professional. Imagine asking an athlete to run a marathon while eating only one meal. Eventually, their performance declines. Container plants face a similar challenge. Unlike vegetables growing in open ground, bucket-grown plants can only access the nutrients inside that one container. Once those nutrients are used, the plants depend on you. Tomatoes are heavy feeders, especially once flowering and fruit production begin. During early growth, they benefit from balanced nutrition that supports strong stems and healthy foliage. As flowers appear, switching to a fertilizer formulated for fruiting vegetables or one slightly higher in phosphorus and potassium, while avoiding excessive nitrogen, helps encourage flowering and fruit development instead of excessive leafy growth. Sweet potatoes have different priorities. Too much nitrogen often produces beautiful vines, but disappointingly small storage roots. Balanced feeding early in the season is usually sufficient, allowing the plant to direct more energy underground as it matures. Organic fertilizers are excellent choices for bucket gardens. Finished compost, worm castings, fish emulsion, seaweed extract, balanced organic vegetable fertilizers. These provide nutrients gradually while supporting beneficial microorganisms living in the soil. One easy routine is to feed lightly every few weeks according to the fertilizer label, rather than applying large amounts all at once. Plants use nutrients more efficiently when they're supplied steadily throughout the growing season. Watch your plants closely. Healthy green leaves, steady growth, new flowers, developing fruit. These are signs your feeding routine is working. If leaves become pale, flowering slows dramatically, or growth stalls despite proper watering, nutrition may need adjusting. Healthy feeding doesn't create giant plants, it creates productive ones. Step 7. Support, prune, and let sunlight do the rest. Imagine a tomato plant loaded with dozens of ripening fruits. Each tomato becomes a little heavier every day. Without support, the stems begin to bend. A strong breeze arrives. A branch snaps. Suddenly, weeks of growth disappear in seconds. That's why experienced gardeners never wait until the plant starts leaning. As soon as your tomato reaches about 12 to 18 inches tall, install a sturdy bamboo stake, spiral support, or compact tomato cage inside the bucket. Secure the main stem loosely, using soft plant ties or strips of cloth, so it can continue expanding naturally. As the plant grows taller, continue tying it every few inches. The support isn't there to force the plant upright. It's there to protect it from gravity. Pruning also plays an important role. For indeterminate tomatoes, removing a few of the small side shoots or suckers that grow between the main stem and leaf branches can help direct more energy into fruit production while improving airflow. You don't need to remove every sucker, but keeping the plant open allows sunlight and fresh air to reach more of the leaves. Good airflow matters more than many people realize. Leaves that dry quickly after rain or watering are generally less prone to fungal diseases. Sweet potatoes need very little pruning. Instead, simply guide the vines so they don't completely cover your tomato buckets or block sunlight. If space is limited, gently coil long vines around the container or direct them along a balcony railing. One practical tip is to rotate your buckets every week if one side receives noticeably more sunlight. This helps plants grow evenly instead of leaning heavily toward one direction. Strong support above the soil allows stronger harvest below it. Now your garden is thriving. Flowers are blooming. Fruit is forming. But there's one final skill that many beginners struggle with: knowing exactly when to harvest. Step 8. Harvest at the perfect time for bigger future crops. Imagine stepping onto your balcony early in the morning. Sunlight glows across clusters of bright red tomatoes, still cool from the night air. You gently twist one from the vine. It comes away effortlessly. The skin is smooth, the aroma is rich. The flavor is sweeter than almost anything you'll find at a grocery store. That's the reward for harvesting at the right time. Tomatoes taste best when allowed to ripen on the vine until they've reached their full, mature color. They should feel firm with just a slight softness when gently squeezed. Waiting too long, however, invites birds, insects, cracking, or splitting after heavy rain. Frequent harvesting also encourages many tomato varieties to continue producing flowers and fruit throughout the season. Sweet potatoes require a little more patience. Unlike tomatoes, their greatest treasure remains completely hidden. For several months, all you see are vigorous green vines. Meanwhile, beneath the soil, the storage roots are quietly swelling larger every week. Most sweet potato varieties are ready approximately 90 to 120 days after planting, depending on the cultivar and growing conditions. As temperatures begin cooling and the vines naturally start yellowing, harvest time approaches. Choose a dry day. Gently tip the bucket onto a tarp or large container. Slowly loosen the soil with your hands. One by one, beautiful sweet potatoes emerge like buried treasure. Some are long and slender, others are thick and perfectly shaped. Everyone feels like opening a surprise gift. Avoid washing sweet potatoes immediately if you plan to store them. Brush away loose soil and allow them to cure in a warm, humid place for about 1 to 2 weeks. This process helps toughen the skin and improves both flavor and storage life. Here's another secret. Don't discard the healthy vines after harvest. They can be composted, and in some regions, young sweet potato leaves are also enjoyed as a cooked leafy vegetable. Nothing goes to waste. Harvesting at the right moment rewards both today's meal and tomorrow's garden. Before we finish, let's quickly cover a few mistakes that catch even experienced gardeners. Don't overcrowd your buckets. One healthy tomato plant or one sweet potato plant per 5-gallon bucket almost always outperforms several crowded together. Don't underestimate sunlight. Tomatoes produce best with at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight each day. Sweet potatoes also thrive in full sun, especially during warm weather. Don't ignore drainage. If water sits inside the bucket after every watering, roots eventually suffer. And perhaps most importantly, don't give up after one imperfect season. Every gardener has plants that struggle. Every gardener loses a tomato branch. Every gardener learns through experience. The difference is that successful gardeners plant again. Each season teaches something new. Imagine standing on your balcony next summer. Instead of empty concrete and unused corners, you're surrounded by living green plants. Tomatoes glow like tiny lanterns beneath healthy leaves. Sweet potato vines spill over bucket edges in every direction. Neighbors stop and ask how you managed to grow so much food in such a small space. You smile, because now you know the secret. It was never about having a large backyard. It was about understanding what plants truly need. A few sturdy buckets, healthy soil, sunlight, consistent care, and the willingness to start. That's how extraordinary harvests begin. Not on giant farms, not in expensive greenhouses, but right outside your own door. So if you've been waiting for the perfect garden, maybe you've already got it. All it needs is the first bucket. If you enjoyed today's video, tell us in the comments which crop are you excited to grow first, tomatoes or sweet potatoes. We'd also love to hear your own container gardening tips and success stories, because every gardener has something valuable to share. And if you're ready to grow more food in less space using simple, practical methods anyone can follow, subscribe and join us for more gardening adventures. Until next time, happy growing, and may every bucket you plant surprise you with a harvest bigger than you ever imagined.